Hello, good Vach, everyone. Welcome to Sichos Haran, Sipurey Baal Shem Tov, Sipurey Tzadikim. We have Baruch Hashem, the story from Baal Shem Tov. Here you go. And we should start, as we said, it's saying stories from the Baal Shem Tov and from Tzadikim is a big segula for a good week, a healthy week. So once Baal Shem Tov was on the road and he heard a message from the Shemaim. They told him that he's supposed to stay at a certain house. So he veered off from where he was. Stuff here. A bit more comfortable. So he veered from his way and he went to this house. And when he got to that house, the people in the household would not let him get in because the son of the owner of the house was very, very ill. So after some time, the Baal Shem Tov sent his student, Reb Tzvi Sofer, to ask them to stay by them for Shabbos Kodesh. And the wife of the owner of the house told him, I told you already, you cannot stay with us because we have a very, very sick child and we are under great duress, a great tsar. And not only this, but she, even more so, she cursed the Baal Shem Tov for being a pest, for like pestering her. So when the Baal Bais heard his wife, he couldn't hold up. He went up to the Baal Shem Tov and told him to go away. So the Baal Shem Tov told him that if the Baal Bais will let them stay by them for Shabbos, he swears that the child will become healthy. No, so the person heard that, so let them in. So immediately the Baal Shem Tov went to the mikveh, and when he toveled in the mikveh, he saw with Ruach HaKodesh that the situation with the child was not good. So he ordered everybody to get out of the room and just leave him and the child alone. So they all went to another house, another room, I'm not sure. And also to his Talmud, he ordered him to wait outside until he will call him and ask him for wine to make Kiddush. Because this might have happened on Shabbos Kodesh. And the Baal Shem Tov stayed in the house alone with the child. And he davened right next to him, mincha, at great length. And he stayed long into the night. And when his Talmud saw that it's taken so long, he was afraid maybe Chas v'Chalila, from the effort of the Baal Shem, davening for the child, maybe Baal Shem himself was somehow damaged, Chas v'Chalila. So the Talmud opened the door, just a crack, and he saw the Baal Shem Tov telling the child, get back into the body because I will not swear for nothing. I will not be shvus sheker. And so the Talmud went away. After a while, he came back. He saw the Baal Shem Tov lying on the floor with spread eagle. And he said to the child, I told you, go back to the body of the child. And he ordered his Talmud to give the wine to make Kiddush. And he sat and he ate and he didn't sleep all night. And in the morning, when the people got up, the Baal Shem Tov told them all kinds of different medications to give the child, and went to the Bismedrash, to shul, to daven. When the mother of the child understood that the child indeed became healthy, basically came back to life, she started crying. She cursed the Baal Shem Tov. So she asked his Talmud, what shall I do that Hashem should be merchel her? So his Talmud told her, don't worry, he will be merchel you. Don't worry. The Baal Shem Tov heard her crying, and he said, his Talmud says, tell her not to cry. Just make a big shalashudas, a really big shalashudas, and I promised her that the child, B'ezrat Hashem, will sit with us by the Suda. And that's the way it was. The child, Baruch Hashem, became healthy, came back to himself, and he lived longer than 60 years. At that time, it was a long life. To children and Parnasa Teva for all his days. This is a story of the Baal Shem Tov for this week. Now, as we said, the Sipurey Tzadikim, we have a story from the Rebbe Melech and his brother, the Rebbe Bzisha. So the Rebbe Melech said that fooling oneself is a big danger in Avodas Hashem. And it's a Maisa Shahaya, something that happened with, the Tzaddik, the Kodesh Elyon, the Chayzer of Lublin, that used to be the Talmud of the Rebbe Melech of Lizhensk. And when he traveled to Lizhensk, he went through a town that he heard that there is a rabbi there who is a very big tzaddik. And he went to him and he saw that he was burning like fire. He was like all aflame. All his avodah was with tremendous fire. He's never seen anything like that. So the Chayzer of Lublin stayed there the Shabbos in order to see what he does, how he behaves. And he saw everything that this Rav did was one constant burning flame in Tefillah and in Torah. So when the Chayzer of Lublin asked him if he was Mishamish, was close to any of the Tzaddik Yador, and he said no. And it was difficult, it was hard in the eyes of the Chayzer, because he knew that the derech of the Chassidus is not possible to find your own way unless you are being makabel from Tzaddik Ador that got it, from all the way from Baal Shem Tov. So the Chayzer of Lublin told this rabbi, why don't we go to Lizhensk, to the Rebbe Blumelech, the Kodesh Elyon. There you will taste real honey, and you'll eat enough in time of Torah and mitzvahs, and you'll be able to taste what true Yir Shemaim is. So this Rav told him, if you will stay with me another Shabbos, I will go with you to the Holy Rebbe of Lizhensk. So the Chayzer stayed with him another week, and he saw the whole week avodas, unbelievable, burning flame. And he saw Shabbos, his tefillah, his Torah, like the big Oivdim, the big Oivdi Hashem. And he was very happy to go with such a great person to his rabbi, to Lizhensk. And so it was after Shabbos, they went together to Lizhensk, and this Rav asked the Chayzer of Lublin, to speak for him, and to introduce him and to, speak for him, ask for him, with his rabbi. Now, the regular way, whenever the Chayzer came to the Rebbe Blumelech, he would run to him and say Shalom Aleichem. And at the time when he came to the doorstep of the house with this Rav, the Rebbe Blumelech turned around, facing the wall, and did not want to say hello to them. So the Chayzer of Lublin went with this Rav out, and they went to their Achsanya, wherever it is that they stayed. And he said to himself, this is something which is very unusual. I know that whenever it is I come to my, to my Rebbe, he's receiving me with tremendous happiness and glee. Maybe it's that person that came with me. I don't know. And he decided he's going to find out what this is all about. And he decided to go by himself to the Rebbe Blumelech. And he came to the house. The minute he came to the house, his foot just stepped on the doorstep. Immediately, the Rebbe Blumelech came to him with love and with happiness and say Shalom Aleichem. And he said, why did you bring me somebody that I couldn't even look at his defiled face? Why did you bring him? So the Chayzer of Lublin was like staggered. He saw him serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with all his koyach, with all his fire. But he couldn't speak. Yeah, it was Rebbe Melech. He couldn't ask him what is this about. But Rebbe Melech obviously felt the kashas in his mind. And he said, listen, there is a place which is called Klipas Noiga. Over there's a mixture of good and bad. And sometimes when a person starts to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with big shalol lishma, with big pride, I'm going to be a tzaddik. I'm going to be somebody. Man, the people are going to look at me. They're going to say, he's looking like a new King Kong. He's unbelievable. Just you wait. And he start serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with this kind of kavanas. He says that's a mixture of bad thoughts and good thoughts, He says that as a result of that, he does not pay attention to root out the bad and turn it into good. So his entire avodah becomes a mixture of good and bad. And he is going in the dark without even knowing what's going on. And he doesn't know where he falters. And he doesn't even feel if there's anything that he does which is not l'shem shamayim. It's such a person, his avodah can be with such tremendous enthusiasm, because very close to this, there is a klipa of eshmik lakachas. This is the there's the three tumadika klipas before klipa snoga in the vision of the chariot of Yecheskel. So we said it's ruach sa'ora from the outside. This is storm wind. The onan godol, there's a big cloud, big darkness, and then there is eshmis lakachas. Eshmis lakachas means self-taking fire, self-consuming fire, and then there's klipa snega, and after klipa snega there is the kedusha. So being that his avodah still remains in the klipa snega, he's mixed good and bad. He's right next to the last klipa, which is totally tama, which is flaming fire, self-taking fire. So the avodas asher of somebody who is in that state can be with tremendous fire, with tremendous enthusiasm and excitement. That person that you came with, all his avodah is from that defiled shirish. Everything is mixed good and bad. There's no Yir Shemaim in his avodah. All there is just a foreign fire that comes from places which are impure. Well, Chozeh Oblin, when he saw, the holiness of the Rebbe Melech, he just took one look at this Rav's face, and immediately he saw everything, and he became very, very scared. And he went to that person, and he told him everything that Rebbe Melech said. And that person started crying bitterly. And he asked him to go to his Rebbe to give him a tikkun, because he really wants to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, be'emsa b'tamim, So the Chozeh Oblin went back to his Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, I can't do anything for him. He's already entrapped in the darkness. So let him do tshuva, and maybe they have rachmanos mishamayim on him. So the Chozeh went back to him, and he told him. So again, he asked him, please go to the Rebbe Melech and ask him for me, and tell him he will do tshuva with all his heart. And his soul was incredibly bitter because his ma'asim was so bad. He says, what, my deeds are worse than the king Achav, that the tshuva will not help? How can that be? So the Chozeh Oblin went back to the Rebbe Melech, and he told him all these things. So the Rebbe Melech told him as follows: let him wait here until my holy brother Rebbe Zisha from Hanipoli will come, and the both of us will be able to do something to help him. because I by myself cannot do it. So they stayed there for a few months until the Rebbe of Zisha came, and they gave a tikkun for this person's neshama, and he made a complete and total tshuva. And for this Maisa, a person should learn not to deceive himself in avodas Hashem, because there is a trap of pride in avodas Hashem, and it's inside a person's heart, and a person has absolutely no idea that this is there, and he should really keep himself, be very careful. And the answer, in order to keep away from such a danger, is to connect yourself to the Tzaddik Ador. Connect to the Tzaddik Ador and to his Talmidim. Then Hashem will for sure be with you, and you will be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'lev shalom, be'emes u'v'tamim. Now, I can't tell you any kind of svaras from my own heart about how much this kind of story applies for nowadays. We know that Rabbeinu said that there will come a time that when somebody will wash his hands from Moitzi, it will be a chiddush like the Baal Shem Tov was at his time. In other words, we are today in a madrega which is so low that anything that we do today, Kadosh Baruch Hu and the tzaddikim already are mekabel kaf schos. It's also extremely important to understand that, as Rabbi Nachman said to Rabbi Nosson, now you're talking about Rabbi Nosson, that Rabbi Nachman said that was on level with the Baal Tanya. I don't have to tell you the greatness of the Baal Tanya that Rabbeinu himself called him Sarah Elef, the minister of 1,000 neshamas. You know, today we're all splinters of neshamas. He's the minister of over 1,000 neshamas, and Reb Nosson was on level with him. And the Rebbe told Reb Nosson, you cannot possibly serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu without me, and I cannot help you without you. In other words, without you doing what you can, we spoke about it already, without you doing what you can do for yourself, I cannot do anything for you. I cannot do your work for you. But you cannot do your work for yourself without the Tzaddik Ador. Without the, there is a story in one of the Torah Likutim Haran that Rabbeinu, that the Baal Tanya, there are two versions in Sichos Haran about who that tzaddik was. One version says the Baal Tanya, and one version says there was a Reb Nochum of Chernobyl. It was by Rabbeinu for Shabbos, and Rabbeinu did not want to say Torah while that tzaddik was in the room. Rabbeinu hid himself, as much as they knew of him, he hid himself from them, so they should not know who he really was. So when in the morning, so until, at night, they stayed until the tzaddik left, and then Rabbeinu said Torah. And in the morning again, he sat there, and Rabbeinu would not say Torah. So, but this time he would not leave. So Rabbeinu said, when you are sitting with Tzaddik Hador, even if you don't hear Torah from him, it's also a great tikkun. And Rabbeinu started explaining why that is. And Rabbeinu concluding says that at the end I did say Torah. So this is something that he told either the Baal Atanya or the Baal Morin 9 from Chernobyl, either one of the two, I'm not sure. I mean, we don't know which one it was. How exceedingly important it is to connect yourself to Tzaddik Hador, and especially, to have kisufim, to be by him on Rosh Hashanah in Uman, and yearn for this, and do whatever it is that you can. And the yearning will bring you there, one way or another. Now, B'ezrat Hashem, let us take a look at the Sichos Haran for tonight. This is Sicha Kuf Lamed Ches 138. Shamati mipiv hakodesh, I heard for Rabbeinu's holy mouth at the time when he spoke to us from the greatness of Sipurey Maises from Tzadikim that was printed in his holy forum, Simas Resh Lamed Daled Chelek Aleph. And he said himself that his Rabbeinu's main Yisraelus to Avodas Hashem was through Sipurey Maises from Tzadikim. And he said, Rabbeinu was born, Rabbeinu's mother was the Baal Shem Tov's granddaughter. And when the Baal Shem Tov was Mistalek, her mother got the house because her two brothers were a Baruch of Mezhibozh, who was a Rebbe of his own, and his other brother was the Degel Machne Ephraim from Sadlikov. So they didn't need the house in Mezhibozh, the Baal Shem Tov's house in Mezhibozh, and her mother left it for her daughter for Masfega. And Rabbeinu was born at that house, at the very room that was the study of the Baal Shem Tov, where he used to do his avodah. And all the tzaddikim, he says, in the house of his mother and father, the tzaddikim were always there because they came to Mezhibozh, because that was the town of the Baal Shem Tov, and they came to the tzir of the Baal Shem Tov. And they all stayed in his father's house. And he heard a lot of maises from tzaddikim. And he said this was his main Yisraelus to Avodas Hashem that enabled him to get to the madrega that he got. And I have to tell you a personal maise regarding that. I remember in the very, very beginning of my journey, it started with putting on film. I worked in an advertising agency in Tel Aviv. And on the way back, I crossed a small store of Lubavitch Chassidim, a small Sforim store. It was, I don't know, maybe 8 feet wide and 10 feet deep. That's it. The whole thing, it was all dusty and whatever. And people just passed there without even seeing it. And it was mamish a few doors down from the agency where I worked. I worked as a copywriter in an advertising agency. So one day I stopped there and I asked him if I could put on film. It is a story how I got to that point. I mean, I didn't know anything from anybody. I didn't know Chabad from Satmar, from Visions. I had no idea who was what. I just know there's Haredim and not Haredim, and there's religious people, with the crocheted kippas, and that's all I know. Well, you can imagine the reaction of Lubavitch Chassidim when somebody asks them, "Would you mind? Can I please put on film?" It's like waving a red cloth in front of a bull. So that's how the thing started. And Baruch Hashem, I started putting on film there, whatever. But I saw there that there were 4 volumes of, it's called Sipurey Baal Shem Tov, all the stories of the Baal Shem Tov. And was written by Bel Zechosid Rebbe Sol Klappoltz, that I remember. So I bought the whole thing, which is stories, and I took it home. Now the thing is, for me, I put it on film. It was basically, I was doing something. It wasn't. It wasn't meant for me to be a life-changing step. It's just okay. So I'm putting on film. That's to do something. I think it was more of a national pride kind of thing more than anything else. It was like, I'm Jewish, I'm doing it, And I started reading these stories. And I was sucked in. I was sucked into these stories. And I was like, it was a world that I've never known. Stories about tzaddikim, about holy tzaddikim, and miracles, and shemus, and this and that. And I was like, whoa, it was unbelievable. It was like, so then came a question in my mind, is that for real or not? I remember when I told the Lubavitch Chassidim there in the store that I was the grandson of the Rebbe Abimelech, and they basically fell off the chair. I didn't know who he was. I just know that my grandmother told me, that I was his grandson, but I didn't know what it was. And they were like, wow, they freaked out. But anyhow, that's what I remember that we're learning about, reading the stories about. And I made the most, without any doubt, the most important decision in my life. I said to myself, look, it's very easy, and you can always decide to disbelieve these stories. But what if they're true? What does it say about the world? What does it say about reality? And I made a conscious decision from now on, whatever I'm reading the truth. That is reality. And that totally changed the trajectory of my life, of my tshuva, and it led later on to me meeting with Rabbi Chesed and so on and so on. But the thing that lit the fire under the Yiddishkeit in my life was the stories of tzaddikim, especially the story of the Baal Shem Tov. That was just like, it totally consumed me. And it was, so that's what, see, Rabbeinu says, I'm in good company. Rabbeinu says that was a thing that ignited his fire. It lit his fire, it lit my fire. Baruch Hashem, Kenan Hara. So we should know that, take a couple of minutes to finish a shtickl ma'aseh with, this Rabbeinu was davening always, that first of all, he was forbidden to perform miracles the way the Baal Shem Tov did. Because once you learn the Torah, if Rabbeinu was also allowed to perform miracles, there will be no free choice anymore. But obviously, the tzaddik is always full with miracles. So there are all kinds of stories, whatever it is. Rabbeinu davened that whatever miracles he did, they will be forgotten. So those miracles that were written immediately after they happened, they remain. The rest, we don't know. But, they asked Reb Nachman Tulchiner, the main Talmud of Reb Nosson. They asked him, please tell us a miracle from your Rebbe. So he told them, a miracle from the Rebbe is me. I'm a miracle of the Rebbe. He was a very simple boy. He was working in construction. And he became a tzaddik, he was the manig of Breslov after Reb Nosson. His son was Reb Nachman's Baal Bir Likutim, was the most profound parish on Likutei Moharan ever written. And he says, a moifes from Rebbe, a miracle from the Rebbe binich is me. I am the biggest moifes from the Rebbe. But nevertheless, one little ma'aseh, there was in a certain, one of the more famous one, there was in a certain place, a Jew had a he leased the whole place, and there were many people working for him. And he was a tough guy. He was, one of those harder guys to deal with. And when people did not have, when the people that worked for him, at least subleased the fields for him, didn't have the money to pay him on time, he would give him very, very hard time. But his wife had a very soft heart with a tzaddikus, and she had rachmanis on these subleasees. And whenever it is that they didn't have enough money to pay, it so happened, so she arranged money, she would give it to them and they would pay, and then, somehow made it work. So one day she became very ill, and the subleasees, her husband didn't come, but the subleasees became very, very worried about her, because what's going to be with them? Such a tzaddikus, whatever it is, if chas v'chalila something happened to her, what's going to be with them? So they went to Rabbeinu. And they told him, they begged him, please, to save this woman's life. So Rabbeinu says, give me a coin. I don't know if it's gold or silver. It's called a rendel. I don't know how much this was. And at those times, the coins, were worth their weight. So they brought him a rendel, gave him a rendel, and he held it in his hand. He says, this rendel doesn't hold the proper weight. So they brought some more. He held each rendel, doesn't hold. So they brought a whole bunch of rendlach, and he went one by one. He says, okay, this one holds the weight. It's okay, you can go back. It'll be fine. And they saw what time it was, and they went back to her, and so it was at a certain, the woman woke up, and it ended up to be exactly the same time. Rabbeinu says this rendel is holding, is exactly the correct weight. And he said that her neshama actually left her body already. And she came to Beis Din Shlomal. And it was a decision, is she going to leave this world or not? It wasn't yet a decision, what's going to be with her afterwards. But right now, leave this world or stay. And the scale was very, very close. And it was leaning a little bit towards her leaving this world, Chas v'Chalila. And she said, when suddenly she said, came a young man, and she told him how he looked, and it was the tzura of Rabbeinu, and he said, Nisua Rendel on the side of the scale of his chus, and he went down, and the Paskin Shaman that should come back to this world, and she became alive again. This is a story that is written down from the people that were involved in that particular story. So, Pata B'Lachlo Mi'efsha. Kodesh Baruch should help us, B'ezrat Hashem. We should all have a ksir v'chsim tova, and a gid giben shtior, and a great week, full with kedusha, full with tahara, full with kol tov, B'ezrat Hashem. B'ezrat Hashem, Yitz Hashem, Monday night, Sipurey Baal Shem Tov, Bli Neder.